Hello, it's good to see you. Today we're doing something a little different, and it's definitely different. And this is not going to be done the way other people do it. Okay? We are going to do a draw my life of my life. Here's one thing you need to know. Here's the problem. I can't draw. So that actually causes a problem when you're going to do a draw my life video. Now, I don't do it like other YouTubers. I've actually only watched one draw my life video, and that was Gentle Whisperings. And I really liked it. It was very good, but she can actually draw and stuff. But I can't. So we are not going to be doing it the way other people do it, but I don't do anything the way other people on here do it. So I guess it's kind of par for the course for me. And we're just going to play it by ear. Now, I did one of these about 3.5 years ago. Some of y'all that have been around for a while might have seen it. But I messed up when I made that video. See, when I made that video, I only had 10,000 subscribers, and I included some personal information that I shouldn't have. That is a no-no. So when I realized what I had done, I deleted the video, and it's been gone for a long time now. So what we're going to do, we are going to actually augment the story of my life with pictures. I have spent a couple of hours going through some old photo albums, and I have found some random pictures from my past that I thought I would share with you along with my video. A couple of things about me, they're just random facts. I have not been married once. I have not been married twice. I have been married 3 times. I am happily divorced, and I plan to stay that way. I am happily single, and I also plan to stay that way because that is best for me. That makes me happy. I still have a good relationship with my current ex. He is an awesome person. So they weren't all bad. Anyway, before I get started, before I draw anything, let me show you a couple of pictures. Now, this picture, I tried to find some pictures of some of my elders, my ancestors. I had a couple other ones out, and now I can't find them. This was my grandmother. This was my mother's mother, and this would have been back before the Depression, along with 2 of her sisters and 1 of her brothers. The looks on their faces are really fascinating to me. I mean, you don't see a smile on anyone's face. Of course, back then, people didn't always smile for pictures. It was just not something that people did. Sometimes they did. But this was my grandmother, and you can see that the girls all have the same pattern. My great-grandmother made these dresses for them. They lived a very hard life. They were very, very poor. They didn't have much. There were 8 kids. 1 of them died very young from the flu when he was about 6 years old. The rest of them, though, it's really interesting. The rest of them all lived into their 90s, which was really cool. I lost my grandmother when I was pregnant with my older son. She passed away at 94. But they lived a very hard life, and I'm grateful that I did not have to live in the time that they did. My grandmother told me they didn't know when the Depression came along because things weren't really any different for them. Life was already hard, and they didn't realize there was a Depression because things were already bad. It's not funny, but yeah, the serious looks on their faces. They had a very hard life. I'm not sure what the occasion was, but they're really dressed up here. Maybe it was Easter. Probably Easter for these dresses. So that's my grandmother. My mom's mom. And here's a picture of my brother on my mom's Volkswagen Beetle. Yeah, he's older than I am. I love those pants. He's not wearing any shoes. I just noticed he's barefooted. Yeah, I don't get to see him as much as I would like, but I do get to see him sometimes. And here's my mom. I could not find a picture of my dad readily. This is in 1967. This is my mom. I'm not sure where this was taken. Can't really tell from this, just a plain background, but yeah, that's my mom. Okay, so my mom and dad. So they had my brother, right? Here he is. And my mom. And my dad. Okay, so they had my brother. Interesting little note. My dad, my mom, and my brother are all left-handed. Kind of strange. Then they had me. So here I come, right? This little bouncing baby. They did not know whether I was going to be a boy or a girl. Back then, of course, there were no ultrasounds. There was no way to know for sure what you were going to have. They already had a name picked out for me. They already knew they were going to name me Mary. In fact, they were so confident that I was going to be a girl that they didn't even bother to pick out a boy's name. They were just absolutely confident. So I don't know what my name would have been if I'd been a boy. I have no idea. They didn't even pick out a boy's name. They named me after my great-great-aunt, who was an awesome, awesome lady. But I grew up in a household full of left-handers. And for a significant chunk of my childhood, all of a sudden I can't remember if there's a U in there or not. And I was ambidextrous. I know how to spell that, but all of a sudden I think there is a U in that. And they gave me a hard time in school because they really stressed about it. And they really worried about it. And my mom told them to leave me alone, that eventually I would decide which hand I wanted to write with. For years, I wrote with both. I could write equally well with both hands, but eventually I decided to go with my right hand. So I know how left-handers feel to grow up in a house where everything is made for the other hand. And yeah, I still do a lot of things left-handed because that's just the way I learned to do them. Actually, one of my kids is left-handed, so yeah, it's kind of cool. So here I am. I can't draw worth a crap, but I can show you pictures. This is me as a baby. My mom made, I don't want to mark on it. My mom made this outfit for me before I was born. Again, they knew I was going to be a girl. They just knew. So here's my little face. I was a little fat baby. And my little shoes. And I was named after my dad's great aunt. And here she is. And here I am later. Much later. Now, she was an amazing lady. She lost her husband many years ago. He died in 1940. And she was born in the 1880s. But she lived another 40 years without him and never remarried. She had her own business. She lived life on her terms during a time when women just didn't do that. And she was a very strong, intelligent, independent lady. And I am very proud to be named after her. But that's us sitting in the little glider chair. It's like a little love seat thing on the little gliders on her front porch. She was a very, very special lady. Unfortunately, she passed away suddenly when I was almost 6 years old. So I still miss her, though. But this was me. Little bitty me. So we grew up in a little house. Okay, here's our house. It was not anything fancy. It was a little single-wide mobile home. And we lived out in the middle of the woods, surrounded by forest. So you have this little house out here, you know, little bitty 2-bedroom mobile home. We lived out here We didn't have any neighbors. We lived on this road all by ourselves. There were no other houses on the road, just us. And we had 7 acres on this in this area. 7 acres of land. Sorry. Okay, this is us during the bicentennials, back in 1976. I actually still have that elephant back there. This is my brother and me. That's my hair is short. I was actually not doing too well at that point. I had surgery not too long before this. I'll tell you about that. Okay. What they didn't know when I was born was that I had a very rare birth defect. Okay, I'll explain this. Okay, so you have your kidneys. I know they look like elf ears, but whatever. So you have kidneys here and your bladder. It's not a cow. Now, you have these tubes here. They're called ureters or ureters or whatever. These typically have valves in them to prevent the reflux of urine when you lie down. The urine stays down here in the bladder. Well, it's supposed to. Well, they didn't know this when I was born, but I did not have any valves in these tubes. So when I started potty training at night, when I would lie down, the urine was backing up into my kidneys, causing significant swelling, like it was causing them to inflate like balloons. The doctor said it's a miracle one of them didn't rupture, and if one of them had ruptured, I probably would not have survived. I kept getting urinary tract infections, and finally, through a stroke of luck or a miracle, my mom was alerted to the fact that maybe what was going on was an issue with the valves in here. And she had the urologist that was working with me to check that, and they discovered that was the issue. I had no valves. So what they had to do was use part of the inner wall of my bladder, take these out. They took these completely out and made valves out of the inner wall of my bladder to go into these tubes. Now, as a result of that, when they discovered it, I had a kidney infection. And I ended up spending a total of 2 months in the hospital, including recovery from the kidney infection and the surgery and recovery from that. It was extremely painful and drawn out and horrible, but it did save my life. If I had not had that surgery, I would not be here today. So now I have a scar that is this long on my abdomen from the surgery. But it's, it was necessary. So this is a picture of us in our house. Now, the house that we lived in was small. It was very small and very cluttered. And this didn't seem to bother anyone in the house but me. I love my family, but they are all pack rats. They keep everything. So you would have stacks and stacks of boxes and papers and just general stuff everywhere. Like if you look at this bookshelf, you can see it's just stacked up with stuff. The entire house was basically like that. Now, it was never dirty, but it was always very full of stuff. I hate stuff. I'm like an anti-pack rat. Here I am. This is me. Hold it. I still remember this little Cookie Monster. This is me on the floor. I think that's my dad's foot. I'm not sure, but it was a very small place. I still remember that brown stove. Yeah, it was very small. There was not sure who this is. There's a lady sitting here in a skirt. I don't know who that is. I don't look very happy in that picture. I'm not really sure. I look like I'm deep in thought or something, but that was me when I was probably 2 or 3. I don't know, somewhere around there. But it looks like we were getting ready for something at Christmas. I remember this poinsettia tablecloth. We had a formica table and green chairs in the little kitchen area in there. And here we are. It's somebody's birthday, and here, that's me right there. And the house was really small. Like you had one wall here, and the other wall was like right over here, really little. The dishwasher was here. We had a toaster oven. The stove is back there. I have a fruit basket in the middle of the table. I have no idea whose birthday this was. These are some of my cousins. Most of my cousins are boys, and I got all their hand-me-downs. I was always wearing their old stuff when they outgrew it. Oh, and this is my mom in the house. If anybody grew up in the 70s, you probably remember these lanterns like this, the plastic. They have this cover for the light bulb. Yeah, and this sweater. Oh my God, this sweater. My mom had this sweater for years and years. I can remember so many times her coming to pick me up from the after-school program. And I remember looking for the sweater because she would always have it on in the fall. But, yeah, that's just the kitchen area in the house again. I couldn't find any pictures of the outside of the house. Oh, and Christmas. Oh, you know what? I love Christmas. I do. I have always loved Christmas. And my family has never cared about Christmas. Okay, this is them, right? And here I am. See, like, sorry. This is me, okay? I'm so excited. My legs are upside down. Yeah, I would always get so excited at Christmas time. Yay! Look at my face. Now, I didn't get much for Christmas. Right here, this is all I got that year for Christmas. I had it all laid out on the floor. You know, we didn't have much money. We grew up pretty poor. And so I didn't get much for Christmas. But, I didn't care. Look how happy I am. I loved Christmas. I would look forward to it so much every single year. And I look how happy. I was always happy on Christmas Day. One of the things about Christmas that I did not like, though, as you can see from my face in this later picture, the Christmas trees. Yeah, my dad didn't see the point in spending money on a tree when we were surrounded by forest. So he would say, if you want a tree, go out and find one. So I would go out, a month or so before Christmas with my machete into the forest and look for a tree. This was the best I could find that year. I remember this tree. This is a cedar, I believe. And I'm not happy with it. I would go out, cut the tree, set it up, decorate it. Nobody else really cared if we had a tree or not. All I wanted was a decent tree, and we never had one. I made 3 promises to myself as a child. My number 1 promise, the first one, had to do with my Christmas tree. I made a promise to myself that once I was grown, I could have any Christmas tree I wanted every year, no matter how much it was, no matter what it looked like, and I have stuck to that promise. I have whatever tree I want. Number 2, the house I grew up in had basically no insulation. It was like living in a tin can. No kidding, in my room, you could open the window and push on the wall on the inside and look out the window and see the wall pushing out. And it was always freezing cold in the winter, burning hot in the summer. And I made a promise to myself that as an adult, I would not be cold or hot in my own home. I would always be comfortable. And for the most part, I've kind of been able to do that. There have been some times in my life where I couldn't always afford to have the temperature where I wanted it, but for the most part, I'm stuck with that. The third promise I made to myself, and this may sound silly, but we had a huge garden every single year. I mean, I am not talking about a little garden spot, no, I am talking a massive, massive garden. And my brother and I were in charge of keeping it weeded. we would have to go out and weed the garden every single day. And then we would have to help pick whatever we were growing or dig up the potatoes or whatever. We would have to help can everything, peel everything, snap beans, put it up for the winter. And it was always hot out there. And I hated it. I absolutely hated every blessed minute of it. And I made a promise to myself that as an adult, I would never again do any gardening whatsoever unless I changed my mind and decided I wanted to do it. And I'm 45 and a half and I have never done it, and I hope to never do it. Although if the end of the world comes and I have to cultivate my own food, I am fairly confident that I will know how, because I spent my entire childhood doing it. I know how to grow it, I know how to tend it, I know how to pick it and can it, I know how to do all that. But yeah, this was one of the promises I made to myself. This is me when I was in high school. Look at my face. I still have this angel, by the way. It is really, really sad, but I have it with my Christmas decorations. It was a very sad looking little angel. But that was a promise I made, was that when I became an adult, I would not ever again have one of these Charlie Brown Christmas trees, and I have stuck to that. All right, let me see. In this picture, I know I'm not doing much drawing. I'm sorry. I can't draw, I told you. Now, back here you can't see it. And this is when I broke both of my arms when I was 8. You can kind of see, these are some flowers that my mom had planted. Now, back there is a fence. Beyond these flowers is where the garden was, and it stretched way out here. And my brother and I were in charge of keeping it weeded, keeping it up, tending it every day. And we would spend a significant amount of time out in that garden. I mean, 7 days a week we were out there every single summer, and then in the fall as well. And oh my God, I hated that garden. And we also had, for heat, in the wintertime, we had, I can't draw, we had a wood burning stove. And looks like a truck. We would have to cut wood, right? So my dad had a portable sawmill, and we would have to cut wood, stack wood, haul wood, fill up the wood box every day in the wintertime, sometimes twice a day, to go into the wood burning stove. So we would have heat. That was our only source of heat for most of my childhood, was that wood burning stove. Yeah, so it was a lot of work. We definitely worked harder as children than my kids do today. Oh, this was cool. My brother was fascinated with trains, and I can't draw a train. I need my son in here to draw one for me. My younger son was also fascinated with trains. My brother was fascinated with trains, so we went to Tweetsie Railroad multiple times, and one time we were up there, we got to meet Fred Kirby. For any of you who remember Fred Kirby, sometimes he was there, and he was there one day when we were there. That's me and my brother. So I have actually a couple of pictures of us with him. This is just one of them. I remember he was really nice. He was a very nice man. So we took a lot of road trips. When I was a kid, that was one good thing, was that my dad loves to go places, and I've been to not all of the continental states. I've been to most of them on road trips, and that was really cool. Another little interesting side note about my childhood, and we didn't ask for this, it just kind of happened. I can't draw a squirrel. Look, here's my squirrel. You know how you know he's a squirrel? It has a fluffy tail there. It's not a furry, that's a squirrel. That's a squirrel. It's gonna get down on all fours. You wanna know why I didn't do a Draw My Life video sooner? This is why. Okay, this happened 2 times during my childhood, and each time we got to raise 3 baby squirrels. Well, what happened was the land around the house, of course I mentioned it was forest all around. Well, a lumber company owned it, and my dad knew the guys who were doing the logging, two separate winters. Well, both times they cut down a tree that had a squirrel nest in it that had baby squirrels in it. And they brought the babies to us. And we got to raise two little families of squirrels. Now, here you can see how little they are. They look like little rats. They're squirrels, and we had to hand feed them. We would go to the vet and get some special formula stuff to feed them through a little bottle. We'd have to hand feed them. It took a lot of care, and we all had to pitch in to help. And my dad made a big indoor cage for them to stay in because it was winter time and too cold for them to be outside without any mommy there to take care of them because the mama took off when the tree was cut down. So they came to us like this, and here they are, and we had so much fun. You can see my mom, they're bigger here, but she's still feeding them with this little bottle. There's one on her shoulder. Oh, it was so much fun. We did it twice, and both times there were 3 babies, and I'm happy to say they all 6 survived. Here's one drinking out of a coffee cup. Here's an ashtray. My dad was a very heavy smoker throughout my childhood. Yeah, it was pretty rough. But then he had a heart attack in '85, and his doctor told him, you can either quit smoking or you're going to die. And as far as I know, he never touched another cigarette, and that was in 1985, and he's been smoke-free ever since. But here's a little squirrel drinking something out of a cup. I'm pretty sure it's not coffee. They probably put something in there for it. But here they are, and my mom's holding them. Now, she wore white cotton gloves with them. They do scratch. They have little claws, and they really hurt. They can scratch you. Here they're fighting over. They both want the bottle at the same time. And one thing they love to do, they love to climb on things. And in the evenings, we would let them out of their cage so they could run around. They would climb up there on top of the curtains. These were our curtains. You can tell it's the 70s. We have that paneling back there and our avocado green curtains. They would get up on top of the curtains and just sit up there. They would perch up there like vultures. And one time, okay, the bathroom was off this way, and my room was down here. It used to be a little shop, and my dad converted it into a room for me, so my brother had his room, and I had one. It was basically no bigger than a closet, but it was my room. I was walking through here. I had just come out of the shower, and I had a towel wrapped around me, and one of these squirrels jumped down and landed on my back, like landed on my shoulder, and just dug its claws in. Oh my gosh, it hurt so bad because it was clinging, and I guess I was still wet, so it was really having to hang on. It scratched my shoulder up, but it didn't do it on purpose. They were so playful. They were so funny. But yeah, they were awesome. So yeah, there they are as babies. So what we would do, we would keep them all winter. And then in the springtime, when it was warm and they were all grown, we would take them out back and we would let them go. And I always hoped they would come back to visit, but they never did. But we were able to release 6 squirrels back into the world. And it was nice that we got to enjoy their company for a little while. That was an interesting experience with the squirrels. Not something every kid gets to do. One of the benefits of growing up out in the country is that you get to experience stuff like that sometimes. Oh, and we had a trampoline right here. My dad built the frame for it out of scrap metal. And I broke my arm on this trampoline. Here I am when I was little, and some of my cousins again. I was jumping on it when I wasn't supposed to. The mat split under me. I was swinging my arms, and my arm came down and hit that steel frame right there. It would have been right about there. And I broke both of these bones and dislocated my wrist. So I was in a cast for 6 weeks. It was blinding pain. And then, 1 week after I got that cast off, I jumped down out of a set of monkey bars, one of these big sets like this, it's like you're way up here. I jumped down, and it was muddy. There was red mud down here, and I fell and landed on my other arm. I broke this arm, both bones, dislocated the wrist. Funny thing was, I saw the same doctor in the ER that I saw the first time I broke my arm, and I was wearing the same shirt both times. Because we came in and the doctor looked at me like, didn't we already do this? Why are you back in here? Yeah. So here I am showing off a drawing. It's a pterodactyl or something. It's very faint. You can barely see it. I like my little pigtails though. My mom used to tie my pigtails with this thick yarn stuff. She put rubber bands on them and then put the little yarn, little bows on my hair. That was in March of 1979. Just a random picture. Oh, another cool thing we had. Okay, so in our front yard, we had this massive, I mean, one of the biggest pine trees I have ever seen in my entire life. And I still have yet to see one bigger than this. Well, one. I went hiking once and saw one that was bigger. But the biggest pine tree, the second biggest pine tree I've ever seen growing in our yard, like the driveway was here, right? And the house is over here. Well, my dad tied a rope to the top of the tree and it was hanging down. Now, there was a bank over here. So the tree was kind of like up on a bank and it kind of swooped down here. It kind of came down. So you could stand on the bank over here, hold the rope, and swing all the way around the tree and land on the bank on the other side. And I got really good. Like I could take a running jump and twirl, like spin myself while I held onto the rope and land over here. It took a lot of practice and I smacked into the tree many, many times. But here you can see this is my brother swinging on that rope. And we built a barn back here. For a little while, we kept a horse. My dad had a friend that had horses. And we kept one of his horses for about a year for him. And that's the chicken lot back there. We also raised our own chickens for eggs and meat. We kept them back there. But you could kind of see a little bit of the bank here, and it kind of comes down. And you would hold on. There's the rope. It had knots in it to help you hold on. And you would swing around. Now, I'm not wearing a shirt, but this is... I told you, we lived out in the country. It didn't matter. It's not like anybody was out there. So you would just swing around, and I'm holding onto the rope there. You just go all the way around the tree. There's the driveway over here. Yeah, that's in June of 1979, or that's when the pictures were developed. The date's over here in the corner. That was one of my favorite things to do as a child, was to swing on that rope. Now, because we lived out in the middle of nowhere, right, here we are, and there's just like nobody, right? And my brother was always in the house. My brother was pretty much an indoor kid, okay? I was an outdoor kid. I wanted to be outside. So I would take my toys outside and I would play and I would make up little stories, like I would play in the woods. I'd go out in the woods, build tree houses, play houses, take my toys out there and spend all day out there playing in the woods. And I think it was really good for me to help develop my imagination because I didn't really have a choice. I mean, I didn't really have any other entertainment. The internet didn't exist. We didn't have cable. There really were no other means of entertainment. So I think it really came in handy, and I think I benefit from it now when I do role plays, when I write stories. You know, I'm writing a book. Imagination. It's not something you're going to learn in a class. It's not something you're going to schedule into your childhood. It's just something that you have to cultivate, I believe. Okay, I found this picture. This is me. I don't know what I'm doing with my hand. It's like a little gang sign or something. My mom. I have no idea where my dad is. He's not in this picture. But that's just a random picture I found while I was going through my stuff. And I hated dresses. You know why? Because when you're in a dress, you can't do anything, right? They put you in a dress, they have you all dressed up nice, and they tell you not to get dirty, right? So you have to just sit there and you can't do anything. And it's a bummer. And I hated it when they made me wear dresses because you can't play, you can't run around, you might get dirty, you might mess up your shoes, you might mess up your dress. So you can pretty much tell how I felt about it. Here I am when I was 4, and that was the best smile they could get out of me. That was in pre-K. And my mom made this dress, and I hated this dress so much. She put a lot of work into it, and I hated dresses because when you have on a dress, you can't do anything. So I said, screw this. I hate everyone. And here I am at 10 in another dress. This was an Easter dress, and I hated the big poofy sleeves. I hated everything about it, and I would not smile. We were going to church, and my mom wanted me to smile, and I just sat there like that. I still remember her getting mad at me. I feel bad about it now. And here's another one. This has nothing to do with dresses. I just found this old school picture of me. Look at my face. Like, what in the world was the photographer thinking that this is the picture they chose? Like, couldn't they have taken a second picture? Like, look at me. It's really nice. I love it. So I do wear dresses now, but I think I like it now because it's voluntary and I don't have to do it. But I do frequently wear dresses to work. I have another random picture here. This is me and in my cluttered home. Here's our phone. We had a rotary phone on the wall, and I'm feeding the cat. I think I was, 1988. Okay, I was in high school when this picture was taken. 88. I have a perm. My little perm. So then, I'm getting older, right? High school. Now, I was very shy and quiet. And in most circumstances, I still am. Like, I'm not talking. I know that sounds, you might not believe me, but most people, if you were to ask them to describe me, I guarantee you 90% of them would say, she's quiet. She never talks. And I was that way all through school. I got over it a little bit in college out of necessity because they make you do, there's more discussion that's required in class. But here I am in high school. This was my freshman year. You can tell there are these ridiculous red slanted blinds behind me. I look like I'm on the set of Max Headroom or something. God, I remember that shirt. I was very proud of that shirt. I thought that was the height of fashion back then. Thank you very much. This was in 1987, and I have my perm, of course. Yeah, that's me when I was a freshman in high school. Oh. So all through school, everything, actually, high school was really good. I really enjoyed high school. I had a lot of good friends. I came out of my shell a little bit. Interesting thing happened when I was 16. Not common, and this is not something people around here do. But when I was 16, I got engaged. I did. I was going with a boy, and he was kind of in a rough crowd, and we got engaged. So I'm in high school taking honors classes, wearing a wedding ring, or an engagement ring, right? Sorry, I keep saying right. This is weird. This whole thing is strange. This is me, and this is my senior graduation photo. You can't really, it was a tiny ring. Actually, my fiance's mom died really young, and he had her engagement ring and wedding ring. She got married very young, had him very young, and died in a car wreck. Very young. It was very sad. He grew up with his grandmother. But I had the ring here. It was very, I don't want to say scandalous, but, my teachers were concerned. I was taking all honors classes, college prep classes, and they didn't want to see me throw my life away and end up living in a town that's about this big. This right here, this is the town I grew up in. Okay. The population, I think, is around 3,000. We didn't even live here. We actually lived 4 miles outside of town. So we didn't even live in the tiny town. We lived way out here. And my teachers were worried that I would get married and not go to college and end up spending the rest of my life not really fulfilling my potential, basically. So they were worried about that, which is really sweet, actually. Oh, here I am. I had to show you this. This, I think this was also my senior year. This was a different set of pictures. Look at my acid wash jeans. Look at that. My high-rise acid wash jeans when they were first popular back in the late 80s. Yes. They, I am really suave in this picture, okay? That is some high fashion right there. And of course, since I grew up in the 80s, it is required by law if you lived in the 80s that you had to have glamour shots done. So this is me. I got my hair and makeup done, and they dress you up. It's like an all-day thing. You go and they do your hair and makeup, and they dress you in different outfits, and then they take your glamour shots. These are 2 of the ones I had done when I was a senior in high school, 1,000 years ago. I found these while I was digging through pictures. I just had to share. Yeah, so this is my tiny hometown. I grew up outside of there. And I knew if I wanted to get a car, I had to get a job. So I went to a little mom and pop grocery store. And I worked in this little mom and pop grocery store. I was a cashier. And I had to learn to operate a manual cash register. I'm still pretty good at it. And I saved up money and got a car. This was my car. This was my Fiero, the 1984 Pontiac Fiero. It was an absolute piece of crap. That was my mom's Ford LTD back there. Yeah, it was a really cool looking car, which is why I wanted to buy it. You can't really see it, but on the front is a plate that says Mary's Fiero on it. My mom gave me that for Christmas the year I got this car. I spent more on repairs than I did on the actual car. But I was responsible for paying. My mom bought it, and then I had to make payments to her every month of a certain amount that we agreed on ahead of time. Had to keep my grades up, had to keep my job. And I was responsible for gas and maintenance, and she paid the insurance. But this was my little 2-seater Fiero. They have the engine in the back, kind of like a Volkswagen. I think it's a rotary engine. It's rotaries. And the headlights wouldn't retract, which was kind of a bummer. They retracted when I bought it, but within a week they quit working, of course, because that's just my luck. But I drove this all throughout high school when it would run. And it died on me graduation night in the parking lot of McDonald's, and it never started again. Fortunately, I was able to sell it for $700 because the body and the interior were in fantastic shape. And that was the exact amount that I still owed my mom on the car, so then I was free and clear. The only problem was my freshman year of college, I had no car. And I was at UNC Wilmington, which is about 3.5 hours from where my family was. I had to work out rides to get home. Some of my different jobs, I wanted to mention this very quickly. Okay, so I worked as a cashier. I did that for a while. I also, for a little while, in high school, also worked at McDonald's. I only did that for about 3 months though, and then I went back to the grocery store because I liked it better. I didn't like working at McDonald's. I still can't stand the way it smells in there. Ever since I worked in there, I cannot stand the way it smells at McDonald's. What else did I do? I did some telemarketing back when it was still a new thing for a satellite. I can't spell. For a satellite dish company. I did that for a little while, but my boss was mean and I didn't like her. So again, I went back to being a cashier. That was all during high school. I have worked since the week I turned 16. Okay, and then, let's see, when I got to college, I didn't work my freshman year because I didn't have any way to get around. I tried to get into the work-study program at school, but it was all full, so I didn't work. But that summer, I worked at both the Eveready factory and Black & Decker. And I worked full-time. I worked 5 or 6 days a week all summer, saved up money, and bought another car. When I got back to college, I worked in retail pharmacy. If you remember Eckert's, I worked in an Eckert's drugstore. I did that for 3 years. And also, during that time, I also worked for a while as a janitor at Laney High School, which some of you may know is where Michael Jordan went to high school. I did that to make extra money. I was working my way through school. My parents couldn't help me, so I had to get loans and put myself through school. But I tried to work 20 to 30 hours a week my sophomore through senior years of high school. During this time also, years 2 to 4 at UNCW, I was also a research assistant for the psychology department, doing animal behavior research. We worked with mosquito fish, Gambusia, and we also studied the mating preferences of voles. So I did that for 3 years, sophomore, junior, and senior years of college. I worked with 2 of the professors at UNCW. And when I graduated, I was offered a paid position to stay on as their assistant, continuing the animal behavior research. We worked really well together. I had my own keys to the lab and came in every day, and I had my job to do, and also helped monitor the animals and gather data and clean fish tanks and cages and just whatever needed to be done, and documented everything. But ultimately, I thanked them, but it was time to go. I was very flattered that they offered me that, but I felt like my time in Wilmington was over. I was ready to go. Where was I going to go? I didn't know. I wasn't sure, but I love Wilmington, but I lived there for 4 years and was ready to move on. So, after I graduated, here, let me show you this. This is me when I graduated from UNC Wilmington. I was in the Sigma Tau Delta English Honor Society, that's the red cord. I graduated in 4 years, 3 credit hours shy of a double major, 1 class shy. I had got my bachelor's in psychology, and I could have stayed. I could have taken a summer class and finished up the English degree and graduated with a double major, but Honestly, at this point, because I was working 20 to 30 hours a week doing the research, the lab research stuff, and taking a full course load every semester, I was completely burned out. And I really, really, I knew I needed to get away because I was really close to burning out. So I decided I would finish up my English degree later. So, and I did on down the road. But this is me on the campus of UNC Wilmington with my degree. Although my years at UNCW did not come without a cost, and this is not something I've talked about a lot on here. I'm going to mention it in the comments because I know this is not something that's easy for some people to hear about. I developed an eating disorder during my time there. It didn't happen overnight. It wasn't something I anticipated. But when I was 19, I had to get my tonsils out. I had constant strep infections, constant strep throat. It never got better. So the doctor said, your tonsils need to come out. Well, they took my tonsils out. And they said I wouldn't be able to eat solid food for a week or two. Well, it was 6 weeks that I could not eat solid food because it was so, my throat hurt so bad. So for 6 weeks, I was basically on a liquid diet because I could not stand to eat solid foods. And in that 6-week period of time, I lost probably about 15 pounds. And I wasn't heavy at the time, but the 15-pound weight loss was noticeable. And people who knew me would say stuff like, wow, you look good. They'd say, hey, you look great, and it seemed to trigger something in me that I didn't know was there, looking back. My mom had made comments, not meaning to, but in the past she had made comments about my weight, and it always stuck with me. Like she'd say, you'll never be skinny. She'd say, like, you're big boned like your dad's family, and you can't help it. You're never gonna be small. You're just, you're always gonna be kind of big, and you can't help it. Well, that always kind of stuck with me. And I had a good friend when I was younger, and sometimes my mom would compare me to her, and she was very slender and pretty, and my mom would say, you're never going to look like her. She didn't mean anything by it, but it stuck with me. So when I lost this weight on that liquid diet, it triggered something in me. And again, it didn't happen overnight, so I was 19. And so I lost this 15 pounds, and at the end of losing 15 pounds, I probably weighed like 110, maybe, after losing that. By the time I was 21, that summer, I was 86 pounds. And that's the lowest that I got. This is a picture of me when I was still in college. I was actually... There was a picture of me sitting in a laundry basket because I was replicating a picture of me when I was little sitting in a laundry basket. This was not my smallest. I weighed probably 100 pounds here, maybe. And I became obsessed with my weight. I would check my weight 2 or 3 times a day. I was absolutely obsessed with my weight. I isolated myself. I just stopped getting around people. I became very, very strict about what I would allow myself to eat. But I lost a lot of weight. I was very driven. I was very focused on, working, going to school, achieving. I was a very high achiever. Like I was a perfectionist. I liked to think about achieving as much as possible, graduating in 4 years and almost graduating with a double major in 4 years while also working 20 to 30 hours a week and doing the research stuff. I was very proud of my ability to just go nonstop on very little food and very little sleep. Um, and then after I graduated, I moved back to my hometown and lived by myself. This was me in the place where I was staying. I took that picture myself. I had a camera, like a 35 millimeter camera with a timer on it. I was maybe 90 pounds in that picture, but I lost more after that. I got down to 86. That was the lowest I got. And at that point, I couldn't even walk up a flight of stairs without feeling like I was going to pass out. And I refused help. My family was worried about me, but I refused to talk about it. What changed for me? See, for me, anorexia was control. At a time in my life when I felt like, even though I had control over everything, I didn't feel like I did. But with that, I could control what I ate. I could control what I weighed. It became my obsession for several years. And you never really get over it. I never have gotten over it. I still live with it every single day. It never goes away. It is something I will probably have to contend with the rest of my life. I wouldn't say I was cured. I'm not cured from it. I recognize the fact that I could very easily fall back into that. I don't want to, and I try very hard to not let that happen. I think the thing that helped me come back from this, because I knew it wasn't sustainable. I knew this was not something that I could do indefinitely. I knew eventually it was going to kill me. The thing that saved me, and this is going to sound crazy, but moving to Greensboro. Something about moving here, and I moved here in 1996. I came here, and it wasn't overnight, but I moved here. I felt comfortable. I felt at home, more so than I ever did where I grew up, and it gave me a sense of comfort that I had never known, and it allowed me to start to gradually deal with the situation. And again, it took probably 3 years here before I really had, I believe, gained enough weight to where I wasn't dangerously thin anymore. And it wasn't overnight. It's not a magic cure. I'm not cured. It is literally something I think about every day of my life and have done so for over 20 years. But I'm happy to say that moving here, I did finish my English degree at UNC Greensboro. Here I am picking up my degree. They had the general graduation, of course, at the Coliseum. 3,000 of us graduated that day. This guy here broke my heart. Look how long my hair is. This is the guy I was engaged to back in high school. And we broke up. I won't go into details, but he came back into my life for a little while when I was at UNC Greensboro. And that time I got to dump him, which was very nice. But never really got over it. You can't see it, but he has my name tattooed on his fingers. He still does, as far as I know. I haven't seen him in, my God, probably 15 years. But, yeah, he came to my graduation, and that was him. I was very proud of that. Look how long my hair is, my God. But I did, I was able to survive. And I think Greensboro is why I'm here today. I think moving here literally saved my life. So when I came to Greensboro, I worked again at an Eckerd, doing again retail pharmacy, which is how I know a lot of the generic drug names at Dollar Tree. But the main thing is, then I got a job doing hospital pharmacy, which is where I learned a lot of the generic names. I have a picture of that. I had a picture of me at the pharmacy. I can't find it now. What did I do with it? Well, I was going to show you. I had a picture of me in the pharmacy, but oh, I can't find it. I'm sorry. So I worked in hospital pharmacy. I also worked for a while with Child Protective Services. I was an investigator, which is a very stressful job. And then something ridiculous happened in 1999. I call it the year I lost my mind. Seriously, I did. Okay, my brother got married in 99 in Chicago, and I was one of the bridesmaids. And I ended up striking up a relationship with one of the groomsmen who lived in Chicago. And I ended up joining their church, which was an adventure. This is me waiting to be baptized. I was scolded for wearing a dress with no sleeves later. I had to put on a shirt over this to go out for the baptism. I will say that the church was a cult. That is just my opinion. Very controlling in every way possible. They are all in your personal business. I ended up quitting my job at CPS, moving to Illinois, and becoming fully immersed in the cult. Doesn't matter what the name of it is, but I became fully involved in this group. And I left my lovely apartment in Greensboro oh, here's the picture of me in the drugstore or in the hospital. This is me right here. And this is in the hospital pharmacy. Up here, these are all the rows of the generic drugs. And you had to know all of them by their generic name because that's how they were alphabetized. And it was here. Now, there were 3 separate pharmacies in the hospital, and you had to learn all different things for each section of the pharmacy. You had to learn all these generic drug names because you had to be able to get the right stuff. And sometimes the prescriptions were written in the brand name and you would have to know the generic. That helps me now when we go to Dollar Tree. So here's a funny coincidence. I'll show you this. When I was getting ready to move to Illinois, I had a Volkswagen bus, by the way. Here it is. We rescued it from a sheep pasture and I got spit on by a llama. But my dad and I got this bus out of there. The guy who owned it said, if you can get it out of there, you can have it. This is a 1968 Westphalia camper, but you can see it needs a lot of work. And we did do some work to it, but ultimately I couldn't afford to do all the work that needed to be done, so I ended up passing it on to someone who could. But it was drivable. I drove it around Illinois the entire time I lived there for about a year. Here's the funny thing. Okay, this is the street that I lived on in Greensboro. Here I am in the bus and I'm pulling it onto this tow dolly right here, and you can't see it, but there's a big U-Haul truck with all my stuff in it. This dude right here would later become my second husband, and we would have 2 kids together. We were friends for years before that. I did marry the guy up in Illinois, but then I don't want to go into details, bad stuff came out. I became aware of some really bad stuff in this group right here. And I left and came back to Greensboro, and my first husband came with me, but he didn't stay long. We weren't married long, and then he was gone and we got divorced. He didn't like it down here, and so he just left. And that was fine with me. We in the church, you weren't allowed to date without a chaperone. So basically, when we got married, we didn't even really know each other. We didn't. We really did not know each other. And he had a lot of problems that I didn't know anything about until after we were married. So I wasn't really sorry to see him go. He had a significant amount of debt. I had debt collectors calling me all the time. He was, there were a lot of problems. And I felt like I had married a total stranger. So I wasn't really sorry to see him go. So anyway, this dude right here, he and I went to high school together, and later we got married and had 2 kids, and that's all I'm going to say about that. But this was cool. If you've listened to my story, River Road, I have a whole playlist, 17 parts. I wrote a book about my time in the cult. It's called River Road, and right now I'm writing a follow-up called Holiday. It's not really about the cult, but it takes some of those characters and puts them in another situation. But if you listen to the story River Road, you probably heard me mention the little concert hall that I lived in. This was it. This is actually a historical monument. It was built back in the 1700s by an architect. My first husband and I lived in this house for about 3 months before I said I got to get out of here. It was the coolest house. Look at this thing. Now, it needed a lot of work, but we lived in there for a while. It was a beautiful, beautiful house. So one good thing that came out of my time up there was that I worked with my brother on a website to help people who have been involved in groups like that. And I also was able to write a book about it, which I think was a good experience. Here's a random picture of me with my mom. This was in 1995, I think. I dyed my hair every different color when I was younger. Here it's kind of a brownish, reddish color. I found this while I was digging through. I always liked this picture. I thought I would share that with you. Yeah, I was probably about 20 in that picture. So, all right, so time passes. You know, I get older. So I came here when I moved back here. I moved back here in 2000. That's when I got a job with a law firm in Greensboro. And I worked there for, 18 plus years. And then they went through a merger last year and I was let go. And now I have another job. It is not the same. And I am not going to give any more details about it because I've mentioned the stalker thing and I probably shouldn't talk about it anymore. So then I married husband number 2. Wasn't planning on having kids, but then when I turned 30, I don't know, I changed my mind. So then we had this little boy. This is my little son. This is my older son. This little tiny boy. This was, he was really small. Look at his little feet. This was my baby, my first boy. And I thought I was one and done with him. I thought, that's good enough. Like I love his little chubby cheeks in this picture. Look at him. He's so happy. He's adorable. He looks like Winston Churchill, but he's cute. So I thought I was done. But wait. When I was 34, ta-da! I had another boy. It was so funny. When I went in for my appointment when I was 10 weeks along. And they couldn't find a heartbeat, which was scary. And the doctor said, don't worry about it. I'm sure, it's nothing. Let's just take you back and do an ultrasound really quick. I'm sure everything's fine. And I got in there, and they did the ultrasound, and they found the heartbeat, no problem. And the doctor said, the ultrasound technician was back there, and the doctor said, do you want to know what you're having? Do you want to know if it's a boy or a girl? And I said, isn't it a little early? She said, well, sometimes if they're in the right position, you can see stuff. Do you want to know? I said, sure. And she said, now, of course, it's early, but it's looking like a boy. And the first thing I said, but I already have one of those. I already have one of those. She said, well, it looks like you're going to have another one. I was so sure he was going to be a girl. I just knew. But she said, no, it looks like a boy to me. No, it can't be right. I already have one. It was just my first reaction. That's just what I said. But yeah, he kind of looks like Archie Bunker a little bit in this picture. And that's his brother being silly over there. He still has this blanket. And here they are again. He's holding, that's like a lollipop or something. It's like got him in a headlock or something. I still have this chair. I've had this chair forever. But that's them. And they are growing every day. They grow up so fast. If you have little ones, oh my goodness. Oh, they grow up so fast. Trust me, enjoy it now because next thing you know, they're going to be grown and gone. But that is most of my life up until this point. It's kind of long and there wasn't much drawing. Here, I'll draw you a flower so I can say I drew something. Here, see, I drew. I paint a Bob Ross picture every Halloween. I think I've done my part. Evie's on the floor down here sneezing at me. But it's been an interesting life, and it has gotten better and better. I think this is probably the best my life has ever been. I am very happy. I am very fortunate and blessed with the people and the things in my life. And I'm happy to have you guys too. Everything is wonderful. So to celebrate our 200,000 mark, which is still unbelievable, I just cannot believe it. I thought I would sit down with this little dry erase board and show you some pictures and talk about my life. And I hope that you enjoyed it. Again, I know it's unconventional, but I don't do anything conventionally, so why should I do this conventionally? Thank you so much for watching. I really hope that you enjoyed it, and I hope that you have a wonderful day. That's actually kind of nice sound. It is. And I will see you again really soon. Bye-bye.